Some people smile every day without anyone realizing how much pain they have survived. They show up to work. They answer messages. They sit at family dinners and laugh at the right moments. From the outside, they seem ordinary, calm, stable, perhaps even fortunate. But hidden beneath those ordinary moments are battles nobody ever saw. Battles fought behind closed doors. The heartbreak they never talked about. The disappointments they carried alone. The nights they lay awake wondering how they would make it through another day. And yet somehow they did. Most people have a very specific image of strength. They imagine someone fearless, someone confident, someone who never seems affected by life's difficulties. But real strength rarely looks that way. In fact, one of life's greatest paradoxes is this: the people who have survived the hardest battles often don't look strong at all. Sometimes they are the quietest person in the room. Sometimes they are the ones who speak less than they used to. Sometimes they are the ones who no longer feel the need to prove anything to anyone. At first glance, these traits may seem like signs of distant caution or even weakness, but often they are something else entirely. They are evidence of adaptation. Because survival changes people, not always physically, not always visibly, but almost always psychologically. When life pushes someone through repeated stress, disappointment, loss, betrayal, or emotional exhaustion, the mind begins to adapt in ways that are difficult for others to understand. The person who once worried about everything may become surprisingly calm. The person who once needed constant reassurance may learn how to stand alone. The person who once trusted easily may begin observing people more carefully. And none of these changes happen overnight. They are built through experience. One difficult season at a time. One painful lesson at a time. One silent battle at a time. The strange thing is that many of these survival traits are often misunderstood. People see someone who enjoys being alone and assume they have become antisocial. They see someone who takes longer to trust and assume they are cold. They see someone who remains calm during difficult situations and assume they simply do not care. What they fail to recognize is that some forms of strength are invisible, not because they are weak, but because they were forged in places nobody else could see. The strongest lessons in life are often learned in silence. No audience, no applause, no recognition. Just a person doing their best to survive circumstances that could have easily broken them. And after enough battles, something inside begins to change. You stop reacting to every problem. You stop chasing every person. You stop giving your energy to things that no longer deserve it. Not because life became easier, but because experience taught you what truly matters. If you've ever gone through a season that tested you emotionally, mentally, or even spiritually, there is a good chance those experiences left traces behind. Not obvious traces, not dramatic ones, but subtle signs that reveal just how much you've overcome. And perhaps the most surprising part is that many of those signs are hiding in behaviors you now consider completely normal. The question is, what exactly are those signs? And what do they reveal about the battles you've already survived? To answer that, we need to look at the first hidden pattern that often appears when hardship quietly transforms a person from the inside out. The first hidden pattern often appears so gradually that most people never notice it happening. One day, you simply realize that situations which once overwhelmed you no longer have the same power. Years ago, a single problem could consume your entire day. A critical comment would stay in your mind for hours. A disagreement would replay endlessly in your thoughts. A setback at work would make you question your abilities. A delayed message from someone you cared about could fill your mind with anxiety. Back then, every challenge felt urgent. Every disappointment felt personal. Every obstacle seemed larger than it really was. But then life happened. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. You experienced losses you never expected. You faced situations you never felt prepared for. You watched plans fall apart. You trusted the wrong people. You carried responsibilities that felt heavier than anyone realized. And little by little, something inside you changed. Today, many of those same situations still happen. People still disappoint you. Problems still appear without warning. Life still remains unpredictable. Yet your response is different. You pause before reacting. You observe before speaking. You breathe before making decisions. To others, this calmness may seem natural, but it wasn't always there. It was earned. It was built through experience. After surviving enough difficult seasons, the mind begins to understand a powerful truth. Not every problem deserves your panic. Not every disagreement deserves your attention. Not every storm deserves your fear. Perhaps you've noticed this in your own life. A younger version of yourself may have worried endlessly about situations that now seem small. Not because those experiences were insignificant at the time, but because your perspective has changed. When someone has already survived heartbreak, financial stress, family conflict, uncertainty, grief, or emotional exhaustion, many everyday frustrations lose their ability to shake them completely. Deep down, a quiet voice begins to emerge. If I survived that, I can survive this too. That voice rarely speaks loudly. It doesn't need to. It has already been tested. This doesn't mean you no longer feel stress. It doesn't mean you stopped caring. It simply means you learned the difference between discomfort and disaster. And that lesson changes everything. The people around you may not understand this transformation. Some may even mistake it. They see your calmness and assume you are detached. They see your patience and assume you are passive. They see your silence and assume you have nothing to say. What they don't see is the journey that created those qualities. The nights spent worrying, the mistakes that taught painful lessons, the battles fought without support, the moments when giving up felt easier than continuing. What appears to be calmness is often experienced wearing a quiet face, and that may be one of the strongest signs that you've survived more than most people realize. But there is another sign that often develops alongside it. At first, it seems unrelated, yet it emerges from the same place. The place where pain slowly teaches wisdom. The place where disappointment reshapes expectations. The place where survival transforms the way a person relates to the world. It begins when solitude stops feeling like punishment. For many people, being alone feels uncomfortable. Silence feels empty. A free evening feels lonely. They constantly seek distraction, conversations, entertainment, noise, anything that prevents them from being alone with their thoughts. But people who have endured difficult chapters often experience something different. At some point, they learn how to sit quietly with themselves. Not because they planned to, not because they wanted to, but because life left them no choice. There may have been a period when support was unavailable, when understanding was limited, when the people they expected to stay eventually walked away. And during those moments, they discovered something unexpected. They were stronger than they believed. Little by little, they learned how to carry themselves, how to comfort themselves, how to rebuild themselves, without applause, without validation, without someone constantly reassuring them. Over time, solitude began to change. It stopped feeling like abandonment. It started feeling like peace. A quiet morning became comforting. A walk alone became therapeutic. An evening without conflict became something to appreciate rather than fear. This transformation often surprises people, especially those who still associate being alone with loneliness. But loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. Loneliness is the pain of feeling disconnected. Solitude is the peace of feeling complete enough to stand on your own. The difference is profound. People who have survived emotional storms often understand this distinction better than anyone. They no longer chase every invitation. They no longer force every relationship to work. They no longer beg for attention from people who offer only temporary interest. Instead, they become selective about where they invest their energy. Not because they dislike people, not because they have become cold, but because experience taught them that peace is too valuable to sacrifice for the wrong connection. Some of the deepest healing happens in private, away from crowds, away from expectations, away from the pressure to perform. It happens in quiet moments when a person finally learns that their worth is not determined by how many people surround them. And perhaps that is why those who have survived difficult seasons often appear more comfortable on their own. They discovered that peace is not something another person gives you. It is something you build within yourself. Yet every survival skill carries a hidden price. The same experiences that teach calmness can also create caution. The same experiences that teach independence can also make trust more difficult. And while these changes protect us from future pain, they sometimes leave behind consequences we don't immediately recognize. Because surviving life's hardest battles doesn't only change how you respond to the world, it also changes how you see the people within it. As life's hardest experiences reshape us, they often leave behind abilities that feel like strengths, and many of them are. The ability to stay calm under pressure is a strength. The ability to find peace in solitude is a strength. But survival has a complicated side that people rarely talk about. The very skills that protect us can sometimes create invisible walls. The very lessons that keep us safe can also make it harder to fully relax, trust, and connect. Because every adaptation comes with a cost. One of the most common changes appears in the way you see people. Years ago, you may have taken words at face value. If someone said they cared, you believed them. If someone made a promise, you trusted it. If someone seemed kind, you assumed their intentions were genuine. Then life taught you otherwise. Perhaps someone you trusted betrayed you. Perhaps someone disappointed you when you needed them most. Perhaps you gave your loyalty to people who never valued it. Whatever the experience was, it left an impression. And from that point forward, you began paying closer attention. Now when someone speaks, you often notice more than their words. You notice hesitation. You notice inconsistency. You notice the difference between what people say and what they actually do. You notice subtle shifts in behavior that many others overlook. A delayed response, a change in tone, a promise that sounds sincere but somehow feels empty, a smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. Without consciously trying, you became more observant, more aware, more attentive to patterns. It is almost as if your mind developed a quiet radar system designed to protect you from future pain. This awareness can be incredibly valuable. It helps you avoid manipulation. It helps you recognize unhealthy relationships. It helps you make better decisions about who deserves access to your life. Many people spend years repeating the same mistakes because they ignore warning signs. You are less likely to do that. Experience has taught you to pay attention. And yet there is another side to this awareness, the side that often remains hidden. Because once your mind learns to search for danger, it does not always know when to stop. Sometimes you notice warning signs that are real. Other times you find yourself questioning situations that may actually be safe. You wonder if people truly mean what they say. You hesitate before trusting compliments. You look for hidden motives where none may exist. Not because you are negative, not because you want to assume the worst, but because your mind remembers what happened when you ignored those signals before. Pain has a remarkable ability to sharpen perception. Unfortunately, it can also make uncertainty feel threatening. The person who once trusted too easily may eventually struggle to trust at all, and that is the hidden cost. Awareness protects you, but it can also exhaust you, because constantly evaluating people requires energy. Constantly watching for danger makes relaxation difficult. Constantly analyzing behavior can prevent you from fully enjoying the present moment. The irony is that the stronger your awareness becomes, the harder it can be to feel completely safe. And this leads to another hidden sign that often develops alongside it. A sign that is even more difficult for others to see. You become careful about how much of yourself you reveal. Most people know a version of you who. They know your personality, your routines, your opinions, the stories you choose to share. But there are parts of your life that remain protected. Parts that few people ever see. Perhaps there was a time when you shared openly. You spoke honestly about your struggles. You trusted people with your fears. You believed vulnerability would be met with understanding. Sometimes it was, but sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes your openness was misunderstood. Sometimes your pain was minimized. Sometimes your trust was broken. And experiences like these change people. Not dramatically, not overnight, but gradually. You learn to become selective. You learn that not everyone deserves access to your deepest thoughts. You learn that emotional boundaries are necessary. As a result, you begin sharing less. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you have learned the value of discretion. You think carefully before opening up. You observe people before trusting them. You allow time to reveal character. In many ways, this is wisdom. It protects your emotional well-being. It prevents unnecessary hurt. It helps you build healthier relationships. Yet even wisdom has a shadow side. Because the same walls that protect your heart can also isolate it. Sometimes people genuinely want to know you. They genuinely want to support you. They genuinely care, but they can only connect with the version of you that you allow them to see. And when too much remains hidden, closeness becomes difficult. You may find yourself wanting deeper relationships while simultaneously struggling to lower your guard. Wanting connection while fearing disappointment. Wanting understanding while hesitating to be understood. This internal conflict is more common than many people realize, especially among those who have survived difficult seasons. Part of you wants safety. Part of you wants connection. And sometimes those two desires seem to pull in opposite directions. The truth is that emotional protection often begins as a survival strategy. At first, it serves an important purpose. It helps wounds heal. It creates space to recover. It allows you to rebuild trust in yourself. But eventually, there comes a moment when survival and healing are no longer the same thing. And many people never notice when that moment arrives. They continue living in protection mode long after the danger has passed. They continue preparing for battles that are no longer happening. They continue carrying armor that has become heavier than the threat itself. Perhaps that is one of the most difficult truths about surviving hard times. The habits that helped you endure yesterday may not always help you thrive tomorrow. And yet none of these changes mean there is something wrong with you. They are evidence of adaptation. Evidence that your mind did exactly what it was designed to do. It protected you. It helped you survive. Which raises an important question. If these hidden traits are not signs of damage, then what are they? What if the caution, awareness, independence, and emotional boundaries you've developed are not proof that life diminished you? What if they are proof that life changed you? And what if those changes deserve to be viewed through an entirely different lens? To understand that we need to look beyond survival itself and explore the deeper meaning hidden within these signs. If you recognized yourself in these signs, there is something important you need to understand. What happened to you was real. The disappointments were real. The betrayals were real. The loneliness was real. The moments when you questioned yourself, doubted yourself, or wondered whether you would ever feel like yourself again were real too. Sometimes the hardest part of emotional pain is not the pain itself. It is the feeling that nobody truly understands it. People see the version of you that survived. They rarely see the version of you that struggled. They see the calmness, but not the anxiety that came before it. They see the independence, but not the disappointments that taught it. They see the boundaries, but not the wounds that made them necessary. And because those battles often happen in silence, many people spend years minimizing what they have been through. They tell themselves it wasn't that bad. They tell themselves other people had it worse. They tell themselves they should have moved on by now. But healing does not begin with minimizing your experience. It begins with acknowledging it. The truth is that surviving difficult seasons changes people, not because suffering is something to celebrate, and not because pain automatically makes someone stronger, but because the human mind is designed to adapt. Every experience teaches something. Every hardship leaves a lesson. Every challenge forces a choice. Sometimes that choice happens consciously. Most of the time it happens quietly. Little by little, your mind learns how to protect itself. It learns where to place trust. It learns where to conserve energy. It learns what deserves attention and what does not. And eventually, those lessons become part of who you are. This is why it may be helpful to look at your changes differently. Perhaps you did not become cold. Perhaps you simply became more careful with your heart. Perhaps you did not become distant. Perhaps you learned the value of protecting your peace. Perhaps you did not become suspicious. Perhaps experience taught you how to recognize what you once overlooked. And perhaps you did not become weak because you needed time alone. Perhaps solitude became the place where you rebuilt yourself when nobody else could do it for you. The way we interpret our experiences matters. Because many people spend years believing their survival traits are personal flaws. They criticize themselves for being cautious. They criticize themselves for being private. They criticize themselves for needing space. Yet these same qualities often developed for a reason. They were solutions created by a mind trying to survive difficult circumstances. That does not mean every protective habit must remain forever. It does not mean every wall should stay standing. Growth still requires openness. Healing still requires connection. Trust still matters. But there is a difference between choosing those things from a place of strength and forcing them from a place of fear. The goal was never to pretend the battles did not happen. The goal was never to erase the lessons they taught. The goal is to carry those lessons without allowing them to define your entire future. Because you are more than what happened to you. You are more than your hardest season. You are more than your disappointments, losses, mistakes, and scars. Those experiences shaped you, but they are not the whole story. And perhaps that is the most important truth of all. The signs we discussed were never signs of damage. They were signs of survival. Proof that you adapted when life demanded adaptation. Proof that you endured when giving up would have been easier. Proof that some part of you kept moving forward even when the path ahead seemed uncertain. Maybe nobody saw your hardest days. Maybe nobody knows how many times you had to start over. Maybe nobody understands the weight you carried while continuing to smile, work, care for others, and keep going. But you know, and deep down that knowledge matters, because the person you are today did not appear by accident. They were built through every challenge you faced, every lesson you learned, every obstacle you overcame. Not perfectly, not gracefully, not without fear, and certainly not without scars. But you survived. You survived the moments that tried to break you. You survived the seasons that changed you. You survived the battles nobody else could see. And perhaps the quiet strength you carry today is not something to hide or apologize for. Perhaps it is one of the greatest achievements of your life. Because sometimes the strongest people are not the ones who never fall. They are the ones who rise again so many times that they eventually stop counting. And if you see yourself in these signs, remember this. You are not looking at evidence of what life took from you. You are looking at evidence of what you overcame.